Welcome to episode 2 of Sharing Developer Stories, hosted by Tech Rally. Today's guest is David Norris, a U.S. Navy specialist, now software developer at NASA. Hey everybody, Tech Rally here, and welcome to episode 2 of Sharing Developer Stories. Today I have a special guest, David Norris, who is a NASA software engineer, and his history, or his... All right, let's start over. Hey everyone, Tech Rally here, and welcome to episode 2 of Sharing Developer Stories. I have the pleasure of introducing a special guest, David Norris, who is a NASA software engineer. And David, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you. Do you mind giving us a little introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name's David Norris. I work at Goddard Space Flight Center. Uh, I've had my whole life has been a non-traditional journey. So even beginning life, I had no desire to go to college. I had my path. I figured out that path wasn't for me, which was a family business. I went into the military, and even within the military, I joined the Navy and thought I would be out on a ship, but I found myself being drawn to what the Army does. So I trained with the Army a majority of my career and went and fought in various war zones. Uh, Started having health problems and got injured and got out of the military. And even after that, it's been a non-traditional path. I ended up doing HVAC, which you saw a video of, and I would clean boilers, kind of like, I don't know, nobody probably remembers it, but the Mary Poppins movie where they have the chimney sweeps and they pop out all dirty. I would get in a Tyvek suit and climb inside a boiler that was an enclosed area and sit there with a scrub brush and scrub off layers like inches thick of soot. So I knew that wasn't for me either. So I started going to college for cybersecurity, and probably 95% of my way through that journey, getting very close to graduating, I realized that I couldn't break into the industry without a top secret clearance. So I had to rethink my strategy. And there was one point, actually, when I was in Iraq in 2008. I tried to start an online business, and I had no idea how to code. I was just cobbling things together. And if you remember how bad the internet was back then compared
Right,
to now,
right.
it was all table-based layout. I was completely unsuccessful, but I paid somebody to finish up my design for me, and I couldn't get the logistics part, the help desk stuff, or support part of it down. So I ended up having to close that business because I was just getting flooded with support stuff that I couldn't keep up with. That was always in the back of my mind. So I decided it was almost a, do or die survival situation. I was like, well, I can't continue doing, this HVAC stuff. So I've got to find some good mix of problem solving that I love and a better environment for me.
Right.
So I stumbled somehow. Uh, I was watching I think a gym related video on YouTube and found CodingPhase.com. So I went in, watched a bunch of his videos, and started learning there. Uh, he provided everything I needed as far as the troubleshooting aspect. He codes his courses in real time, so when he hits an error, he will show the error. He'll start going through his process to figure it out. And that's when I started. Once I got a decent footing in HTML and CSS, I would start pausing his videos, go in and figure out the errors myself, and then come back and watch his solution, compare it to mine, and tweak how I debug accordingly. And that that pushed me so far along so rapidly that within 2.5 months, I only applied for 3 jobs all through Indeed. got responses on all three, and then got a job or accepted a job at one of the three.
Wow, that's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, so there's Treehouse is good, Codecademy is good. I like certain things about Udemy, but they all have their place. And what is missing out of everything I've gone through and experienced with learning how to code is the real-time coding and the debugging is lacking when somebody prepares a course and they have no errors. Everything's like fairy tale land and everything just works. That's not
Yeah,
real life. That's
exactly.
not
Yeah.
development.
Right, right, right. And
So,
then yeah, and then what happened after? I know you landed your first job. You were there for about a year, and then
yep.
what was that next transition like?
Oh well, it indeed again. Uh, I knew I wanted to. I was trying to get a security clearance again because mine from the military had lapsed. It wasn't a top secret, but there was a problem finding a sponsor to do that because you can't just go get that. You have to have a company say, "Hey, we're going to pay this sum of money, and it's going to take you a couple years. You might get in, you might not." Kind of getting held in limbo.
Right.
Um, and I've always wanted to work for NASA. My mom actually has worked for NASA for 43 years, I think, 45 years, something like that, since 1971, whatever that is. And she couldn't help me get in. She always would. Ever since I was 18 years old, I said, "Hey, I want to work for NASA." And she'd give me a link to USA Jobs. She said, "I can't help you. She said, just look for openings."
Wow.
Even up till the time that I accepted the position working at Goddard, she told me the same thing. Go look at USA Jobs. Wouldn't even give me a reference. So that's it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I applied on Indeed and surprisingly got a response back. Went in, I was freaking out for the interview. For
Of course.
one,
I mean,
I was
it's a big company.
yeah, I was crash course studying and went in and I have a little bit of a thing where if I get in a business situation or an interview situation in front of like a panel of people, something just clicks and I turn into a different person where I'm business focused and I do what I need to do. Don't really have a problem communicating with the people in the room. I have a little bit more of a problem online for some reason, but I
Right,
guess that's
right.
another issue to work through.
Yeah.
But I went in, did an interview with them. It went well. I saw the person I was replacing and felt a bit overwhelmed because he single handedly when that when that group first formed, he modernized them and brought all their web components together. And I was replacing him after
Right.
a year of professional development. So it was it was tough. What was very interesting was they were more concerned with my problem solving and what I achieved so far versus what technologies I used. They didn't care. A lot of their stuff, because of the way this guy grew up with Java and C, he naturally loved Perl, which, I don't know if you know the history of Perl, but Larry Wall, who was a NASA employee, created Perl.
Oh wow, I
So,
didn't know.
so yeah, NASA is huge into Perl. Even though they use everything, like I even have a Next.js application that I created since I've been here. They use Ember, Vue, a lot of stuff. But yeah, so they said, "Oh yeah, you'll mainly be working in Perl. How do you feel about that?" And I just had to say, "Hey, I have no idea about Perl at all, but by the time I get here, I'll have an understanding of it."
Right, right.
And I had to give my company 2 weeks. The way it worked out was they couldn't bring me in for 3 weeks until the new fiscal year rolled over.
Mhm.
So I had 3 weeks and I did crash course stuff on Perl. And luckily, coming into a mature code base, uh, I had perfect examples of what I should do. While I didn't have a senior developer to run things off of, I did have examples to go off of. And that greatly accelerated my knowledge.
That's awesome. I mean, thank you for that introduction. Lots to unpack there, obviously, with like going from the
Yeah.
Navy to school for cybersecurity to front end engineer to now software engineer. Um, but yeah, let's rewind just a little bit, just kind of from like where you already start. You were kind of mentioning the non-traditional background. Um, what was your motivation, or what kind of experience was it like when in the Navy as an operations specialist? I know you did that for about 7 years. Is that pretty traditional to stay as long as you are serving in the military in that form?
Well, I had planned to retire.
I see.
Uh, yeah, so I wanted to do a career of it. And when I got into it, I just kind of had an aha moment. Light bulb went off over my head. I did my uh, first deployment I was on a aircraft carrier, and we were out in the Persian Gulf, and I was sitting next to the head of our division who had 25 years and he was getting ready to retire. Me, after being there for 4 months training, I was sitting and doing the same position he was doing at 25 years. The only difference was what was on my collar. Uh,
So you
and I
saw
was,
your future essentially.
yeah, I just saw a dead end. I
Right.
mean, it's great, retire, get paid the rest of your life, get health the rest of your life.
Right.
But
Right.
did I really want to be stagnant from 4 months until 20 years? Hey, that's not the way I am. I'm not
Yeah.
happy with staying in one spot, not learning anything.
I completely agree. I mean, I was in the same situation at my first engineering position. I just said, if I stay here 10 years, I'm going to be that guy. If I stay here 20 years, I'm going to be that guy. If I stay here another 30 years, I'm going to be that guy. And now I could say that I'm a director at some small company, and et cetera, et cetera. So, right. So in some ways, you saw your future. It's pretty telling. It's kind of crazy how you could see your future, but you're still staying in the present. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I guess you can spin that for anything,
Right.
but it's good to have options. Like
For sure.
with what we do, you have your job and that pays the bills. That's fine. But you can always expand from that. You can create the next Facebook. That's an extreme example. But you can create websites, you can create applications, get them out there, make a little extra money. See how bad taxes are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just spent an hour on the phone today with the IRS too, so that was fun for one of my LLCs. Yeah, so uh, it's just it's really it's really tough situation when you're not going to move anywhere in an environment. So that's when I started looking outside to what I could do to basically make me feel like I'm not on the hamster wheel. And I found that through a program they had where they would send me to an army unit. I would train doing their job, and then I would go deploy with them. So I did that for a whole lot of things, for route clearance for IEDs, um, for something called CRAM, which is counter rocket artillery mortar, and that's the stuff I did in Iraq. Then I did uh, detainee operations in Afghanistan, which was they would catch people trying to, let's say, shoot mortars at the base or something, or they're killing other people or whatever, and they would get arrested by the Marines, and then it would be my job to keep them safe so they could get to their court date or whatever, so that they could be tried fairly. And that was pretty wild. But
Yep.
coming out of that, I got hurt and that took me down for a long time. So I basically couldn't continue doing that stuff that I enjoyed with the Army. And I already knew what my path was if I stayed on ships in the Navy.
Right.
Um,
So you're kind of in
but
that pickle of like, what do I do? I physically can't do what I enjoy doing. And
yeah,
if I go back to the Navy, then I already kind of know what 25 years will be like of my life. So how did you ultimately um, make a decision? What was your thought process like? I know you went to school actually, but maybe you could elaborate
mhm.
on that more.
Yeah. So the last couple months I was in in Afghanistan, I discovered a program from UMUC. It's now called, I think, UMGC or whatever. But they had where you could take classes on base and work it towards a degree. So at
Nice.
first I was like, okay, I'll do business administration. So I took a one class, and then I started thinking about, I was like, well, that programming thing was in the back of my head. So I was like, well, maybe computer science would kind of fit better into what I might one day want to do. So I switched majors and had a double major in business administration and computer science. Uh, Managed to take one more class before leaving, and then continued that for about a year after. Uh, but I guess backing up, my decision to leave the Navy was just based on the fact that I couldn't switch jobs because the original job I had in the Navy was was undermanned. So they said, "Hey, you can't switch to what you want to do," and that's that. So I said, "Okay, then I'm going to go to college, and I'll come back as an officer or something if I decide to do that."
Seems
So that
logical
was the
enough,
plan.
right?
Yeah. So I got out without giving it a second thought, and I had to make money, so I started doing the boiler cleanings and HVAC and stuff. And at night, I was still doing UMUC for computer science business administration.
I see. So basically, on top of so you weren't when you were doing the HVAC stuff, it wasn't was it officially through the Navy or like through the military, or was that a separate, like completely
That was just me doing
independent
it.
contractor type of job?
Oh, you're talking about the HVAC job?
Yeah, while you're at school. How does that work? Is it still
Oh
part
no,
of
I just went and applied.
I see.
Um, oh, actually, that's not correct. Somebody told me I need to apply because it will change my life.
I see. I
And
see.
they made a phone call. It was my closest friend did that, and
Yeah.
he also works in HVAC in that union I worked for. Uh, so I went in, talked to the head manager and the owner of the company, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, you can start tomorrow."
Yeah.
So I did that, and then going to college at night, I was spending a ridiculous amount of time doing that. So I'd work from either 5 to 6 in the morning till 2 p.m. doing HVAC. Then I'd work till 10 or 11 at night doing college. And on the
Wow.
weekends, 16, 18 hours a day. That's Saturday and Sunday. That's when I would get my papers done and all that. So it was just nonstop working, but paying the bills, working towards getting what I want to accomplish done. Uh, when I hit my first programming class, it was like a pseudo programming class. Uh, Cybersecurity just became available, and it was the new hotness. So I got sucked into it, and I switched the computer science major to cybersecurity, not realizing it had absolutely nothing to do with programming.
Right.
I ended up learning a bunch of uh, policy making for cybersecurity, disaster recovery plans, which actually is helpful now, but that still has nothing to do with programming, just
Mhm.
where you store your backups essentially. Um, so I continue with that, not knowing all the way until I was about to
Graduated.
graduate that this might as well be basket weaving for what I want to accomplish.
At that moment in time, at least, yeah.
Yeah. So with that, it's probably important to note just for people watching that are like, I don't have enough time in a day. Right after I switched over to cybersecurity, my company I was working for HVAC was like, we need you to go to apprenticeship school, which is at night, and it's 3 days a week, 4 hours a night from 4 to 8. And I was still going to college full time.
Wow.
So for the entire time, including about a month after I graduated, I was doing their apprenticeship program 3 nights a week and doing college and working. So
So wait. What is your what would your busiest day be look like? So you go to work from
so 6 to 2 on average, could be five
right.
to two, 4 to 2, whatever. Um, I would do work, get all dirty, and come home, take a quick shower, and then uh, turn around and go to my apprenticeship school from 4 to 8. Get back home by 8:30, and then do my college work till whenever early in the morning. Then do it all over again. And then I would get my breaks the days I didn't have apprenticeship, so I'd get to go to bed like 10.
Oh wow, the luxury of going to bed at 10.
Yeah,
Sounds great. Oh
yeah.
man,
So
that sounds rough.
yeah, so I somewhat feel like I wasted time since I ended up leaving right after I did the apprenticeship, but it was a good experience. I learned a lot. I
Yeah.
know enough to run a HVAC business now, so that's okay. Not
Yeah.
really what I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight is 2020. I mean, like you just never know at that moment in time. Like you want to hedge your bets in some ways or another. And I'm sure. How did you realize that? Or maybe you could kind of explain a little bit more. Like when you graduated with your cybersecurity, you're
Hmm.
kind of like out in the open looking for a position. Were you applying to jobs and people were just giving you a lot of no's, or what made you start looking into alternative ways to learn how to code and things like that?
So the at first, yeah, I was just rapid firing applications out, and I did get some responses saying, it, basically saying if I don't have an active clearance, I can't get in. Then I started tapping into my network, which my father owns his family business, and he has a lot of connections. Well, I wouldn't say connections. He knows a lot of people that are high up in companies like GDIT and other organizations, even in the Capitol and all that. And he contacted them, and I had phone calls with a lot of them, and they said nobody's going to pay for your top secret clearance. Nobody's going to take you. You have to find somebody to sponsor you, and it basically can't be us.
Can I ask another question? Is it
Yeah.
Was it so? Would you say that your clearance was a more of a blocker than your actual skill set, or was it a combination of
Oh,
both?
absolutely. Yeah. The We're talking about a skill set being able to read a TCP/IP packet,
Hmm.
or maybe SYN ACK packets, just for anomalies. We're just using wireframe or Wireshark. I mean, things like that. Just basic tools. That's what an analyst does. Uh, and
So
you
just
just
to,
sit back waiting for their automated system to pick up on hits.
well, I guess my question is, when you did graduate from with the cybersecurity, were you looking for a software engineering position, or what kind of positions were you
Oh
looking
no,
for?
cybersecurity positions. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so
Yep.
so essentially you're kind of looking for cybersecurity positions, but you couldn't
Mhm.
seem to get the job because of the clearance required.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Just to clarify, just it's good to like kind of package it up. So you were looking for a
Oh yeah.
cybersecurity position, and then so what ultimately what was that kind of aha moment where you like I need to do something a little bit different?
Well, it was after I talked to the people on the phone
Mm-hmm.
who would have been my best bet at getting in.
Right.
I mean, they could have turned around and talked to HR or something if they could. I don't know if they could, and say, "Hey, let this guy's application through."
Right. But they
They
said
let
no.
Yeah, but instead I was told, "Hey, get your top secret first." And there's a reason behind that, but I never got to see why.
Okay, so now that you know you're getting a lot of no's because of just some rather complex situation, and not everyone is in a kind of situation like you are, because obviously, I mean, even for me, I've never really been in the military, so I don't really quite know what the clearance logistics are like. But uh, how did you know that being a software developer could help you get past that clearance issue? Did you talk to a lot of other people that have kind of been in that same boat as you, or
Nope, I had no idea.
so
I
you
knew
kind of
that.
took a risk?
Yeah, yeah, everything is a
Sure.
little bit taking a calculated risk and hoping it kind of pans out.
Mhm.
But for that, really, really it was just a shot in the dark. I know a lot of positions don't require clearance. I know a lot do, especially in my area because I'm right up against DC. So still, a lot of the LinkedIn, recruiters contacting me constantly say, "Yo, we're looking for cleared positions doing Angular or doing React. If you don't know, if you're not a good fit, let me know somebody who's already cleared." It's always you need to be already cleared because nobody wants to pay. Back in 2014, when I first researched it, it was 50,000 that they had to lay down up front, and then the sponsorship process would start, and that was no guarantee I could get the clearance. I can't imagine what it is now. I haven't looked it up. It really doesn't matter because that's not the path I'm trying to take.
Right. Right.
There's plenty to do without worrying about a clearance.
Yeah, I guess that's yeah. I mean, that's kind of the hopeful transition that a lot of majority of us try to be in. But so now that cybersecurity may not be the right path for you just based on your current your situation at the time, uh, when you decided that I'm going to look into the software engineering, maybe like in your head it was like computer science. Uh, what convinced you to do a alternative platform like CodingPhase versus something like, oh, should I go back into school again and figure something out from there? Was it a long
Well,
decision? Was it a pretty quick decision? What was it like for you?
so I know you went to a coding boot camp, and I did not know that existed until I already had a job.
Hey, you
So
saved yourself a lot of money.
yeah, I didn't. I probably would have gone for that too. So I and I probably actually would have failed and kept getting held back because I just constantly struggle so much. Sometimes I feel like I just can't get things down. But like I said, I was working out, and on the on the TV, I just pop on like YouTube fitness videos because I work out alone. I have a home gym, and it's like the 350 square foot gym, like a two-car garage. So I'm working out, and at the end of a video, something pops up for coding things, like completely unrelated. I don't know what's up with their algorithm, but uh, it
Wait,
had
what
a
year was this? If you don't mind me asking, what year was this when
uh,
that video
it
popped up?
was 2018.
2018. Okay,
Yeah,
I was gonna say
it,
maybe the algorithm back then wasn't as good, but it's only 3 years ago. So
yeah, it was recent. So I clicked on it and watched his first video, and I can't remember what the video was, but uh, that prompted me to keep watching videos. And then I went to his platform, and it was $20 a month for a whole bunch of courses. So I was like, yeah, I can afford that. So entered in and took the first course, and that was great. Then right after that, he uh, he opened up like a free mentorship program, and I emailed him. I actually emailed him that same video I sent you,
oh yeah.
of me like climbing out of the boiler, and that really caught his attention. He always said that was like some stuff you see on the Discovery Channel. So like, I was like, I never thought about, but I was like, yeah, that's the stuff you see that you don't want to do. Um, so I applied for the mentorship program. Didn't get it, but I followed along with their timeline, and was doing all the projects. Uh, and that was right before I landed the first job. Um, completed all the projects fine, worked through my debugging process. I was like, you know what? I'm probably okay to get a job that deals with, HTML, CSS, and basic JavaScript. Nothing crazy. By the time like a week or two before I got the job offer, I had just started React. So I had, I stayed up late a whole lot and learned it enough so that I could build my own React application. I think I built like a something with the IMDb database where you just search movies and stuff. It stored it in Firebase, and uh, and then I went to work, at that company. They were using Angular JS, so the Angular one, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to learn Angular one."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Hey, how about I use React instead?"
Right.
And the guy, the owner of the company was, I guess, confident enough in his skills. Since I was a one person team, he was like, "Yeah, use it." He's like, "Just go ahead, go make." We're working on a product. Actually, I probably shouldn't talk about what the product is, but it's
Yeah.
for the Army.
Got
So
it. Got it.
yeah, it was like an R&D type project that got demoed, um, basically where they have like war games for a week. And I created the front end of that in React, and they had this machine learning stuff that they had for their database. They connected the back end with a Go API. I connected to that Go API with the Node.js API, and and they used it for that week. So
Yeah.
it and they said it worked great. You know, I had a bunch of drag and drop in it that pinpointed locations, a whole lot of features, and I developed that over the course of a few months. Since I knew it was a hit, I knew I was okay with my development skills,
Right.
and I wanted to expand that. I could have done it there, but when I saw NASA pop up,
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Holy
I
cow!
mean, it's
I've always
amazing.
wanted to go here, so
Right.
I
Right.
got to go
Right.
for it."
But just to rewind, I mean, of course, let's talk more about that, the job stuff later. But in terms of like
Mhm.
the educational aspects of it, I think, like, what was the first class you took from the coding phase, and then how did you transition? Because I know there's like an abundance of courses, and sometimes people
Yeah.
say information overload can just lead to just a lot of confusion and things like that. How did you know that I could take this course first, and then was it the mentorship that kind of geared you to the right path of building projects and things like that? How did that work?
Well, so what was great about that I see that's kind of a problem with things like Udemy and all that
Hmm.
is he prepared a timeline of what you need from knowing nothing until full stack developer. You know, using his courses, of
Of
course.
course, yeah.
Um, but I I ignored all the other stuff. I ignored Udemy, Treehouse, all the other things. I didn't do any other searches. And I said, okay, I'm just going to complete this and see where I end up at.
Hmm.
And if it's good enough or not, you know, if not, I'll move on. But I started with the first thing, which was like intro to HTML and then CSS. Then I built like a Facebook clone, but just the front end of it, just to get like the CSS further ingrained. Then I built some sites on my own just to further ingrain that. You know, then moving on to JavaScript stuff, moving on to back end, blah, 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 continuing on with the full stack journey.
Right.
And I always just focused on that until it wasn't enough. If there was something else I needed to expand upon, like React, for example, he had a basic React course where we built a real estate website, but none of it connected to a back end, for example. So that was a spot for further learning. So I could do that on my own.
Right.
Or if I wanted Next.js, you know, I at that time he didn't have that. So I had to go outside. Actually, it was Gatsby back then first, and then Next.js. So I went on Gatsby's site, and they had just put out their um, like tutorial and demos.
Right.
So
So
that's
basically, you kind of in the initial time, you kind of solely stayed in the kind of the coding phase, I guess, bubble of courses. But
yeah,
eventually, as you got better and better, you were looking out for additional resources specific to what you were looking for.
that's right. Yeah,
Right.
no one solution is going to be the perfect one and the only one you ever
Right.
have.
And I
Like,
think that's the point, right? Like
yep,
you have to, like, as great as courses are, even on Udemy or Treehouse or even Coding Phase, I think as a developer, we're essentially problem solvers, and you can't just rely on this one course to like solve everything. You leverage the courses that you've taken, and then you go out and seek essentially what you're looking for. And I think that's kind of what I would recommend to a lot of people trying to get into this space, is that you can't just have this golden ticket and just be like, I'm going to be a software developer. Like, a lot of times, even for your journey, based on the conversations we've had, it's not just about, oh, like I did this school and then I got a job. It was like I had to go through some hoops and some loops and figure out, okay, this isn't working, so I need to start looking into this platform. And then once I got this platform, it was kind of saying that, oh, I know my fundamentals, but I need to know how to create a backend. So you went out and looked at the documentation, found the backend, or I need to know server side rendering, or you go to look at Gatsby or Next.js. So I think the narrative or the kind of the point of what I was trying to say is that as great as these resources are, which I completely support, use them and then leverage them to figure out what you need to what you need to solve, right? So in this case, you're trying to find the backend, so you kind of reach out to documentation and then you find the information that you need. So I mean, kudos to
Yeah.
you for not just staying so like isolated or staying so scoped to one platform. Leverage it and then figure out what you need for yourself. I think that's the most important part.
Right. Yeah. Any course will couldn't give you what you need in the basics.
Hmm.
The goal, or not the goal, the key, at least that I've found out, is to not be scatterbrained or take a scattershot approach and just go all over the place. Like, have a goal in mind and set down your own timeline. If you write it, maybe add courses next to it in your little to-do list or whatever, and and follow a path. Don't be like, oh, React.js is great. Today I'm going to take a course in that. Now I want to go take a course in Ember. Now I'm going to go take a course in Angular. Like that, it doesn't work if you have the goal of becoming a software developer.
I completely agree with that statement. It's I think sometimes people fall into how many languages do I know, but rather than how I rather have someone learn one language and build multiple projects on it versus know 5 languages and then build one crappy project. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's better to be good at one specific skill set because it really does translate to other languages. You're like, oh, okay, in this language is statically typed, so I just need to add the type of what my arguments are before I actually use those specific functions, while JavaScript may not require it. But it's just, as an experienced developer, you start to realize like, oh, this is more or less the same thing. I just have to figure out how they how they structure the code essentially. So that's a
Oh
good
yeah,
point.
yeah. That's another big light bulb that went off for me.
Right.
When by the time I even got to NASA, I really only dealt with JavaScript.
Hmm.
So when they say, "Hey, use Perl," like that was a big uh-oh, I might get myself in trouble here.
Right.
And
Right.
I was worried, but since everything I had done to that point was just reinforcing my JavaScript knowledge, I started to see the connections.
The patterns essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So while I might not have been able to make a great application in Perl or Python or C or PHP, all the stuff I know now, I can see the patterns that are the exact same. It's just the syntax I have to learn.
Exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
really easy. And if anybody's doing that, you can, when you get in trouble or you don't know what you're doing, you get errors. So so I for a while I was saying that I do error driven development, and I
Honestly,
find
yeah,
the errors and it works.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I say. We're just like error readers because sometimes you just try and like it's weird. Actually, I think maybe you can elaborate on that a bit, but I think what a lot of new developers they kind of run into in terms of their software development journey is that they don't actually read the errors. They just start freaking out and then they post on a
Yeah,
forum or they look at Stack Overflow or Google. You'll be surprised how
yeah,
much reading an error actually tells you what the problem is, right? And
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, that's maybe that's the benefits of a debugging and the benefits of knowing of taking a course that shows not just the happy path, but the path of saying like, oh crap, I ran into this syntax error or like I misspelled a word, right? And
Yep,
then you just kind of run into that issue and you're like, okay, I know that if I run into the same issue, this is kind of what I need to do.
absolutely. I can confidently say that those courses, I think all courses should be like that to begin with, all video courses, because that set me up for success in the future. If nothing else, I could have
Mm,
taken HTML, CSS, anything, anywhere, and been fine. But knowing how to debug to me is number one. Like if you just freak out because you have 1,000 lines of red text, and you don't know whether to look at the top or the bottom, you I know a lot of time the whole stack trace does tell you a good amount of info that's important, but for beginners or intermediate, most of the time you can just read the first line. And you're like, oh, it says, did you mean to type dollar post?
Yeah,
Whatever
and
is ambiguous. Like, if you freak out and don't even read that first line, then you're going to have a bad time. But but
yeah,
me going through and seeing that process really set me up for where I'm like, I still get heartburn and have like the freak out moment a little bit, but I'm like, okay, let me sit down and read this error because I know I can solve it.
yeah, and I think that's, I mean, we could kind of go into this like deep end about the human mind and things like that, but I feel like the this day and age, we're just so used to just like give me the answer or give me
Yeah,
the solution right away, right? So when you see an error, rather than taking the time to look into it and see what the actual problem is, people just want to know what the answer is right away. And that's kind of how a lot of the courses are catered to, like the audience that just wants the happy path solution. And I'm not saying that it's a bad or a good thing, because to be honest, like sometimes I've made videos about Vue and things like that. And the debugging could take like 30 minutes. And who's going to watch 30 minutes of like you trying to figure out what the problem is, right? So that's probably that fine balance of trying to, number one, debug, but not make it so long that the audience kind of like loses their attention about what you're doing. But yeah, like in some ways, I actually encourage people to. I rather have you spend a week working on a small feature and debugging and things like that than trying to build out this project that you follow this tutorial with your handheld, no errors, and just it's like, oh, I built something. But the reality is like there's a lot more value of building a small feature where you've kind of went through the gauntlet of, oh, this doesn't work, why isn't this data coming in? All of these questions are just part of what makes you a software developer, but it's really hard to express that in courses at times.
right. Yeah, yeah. For
Yeah.
my job now, if I don't have errors, everything's working and I don't have anything to do. So
Yeah,
so
it's
my
job
job
security.
is,
Errors are job security.
yeah, yeah, my job is, well, in part fixing errors if I have no new features or new applications to develop.
Mhm, mhm.
So and it kind of amazes me that some errors go undetected for years.
Yeah. So I had a quick question about just your whole process. Obviously, it's been pretty ups and downs, and trying to figure out how to navigate through clearances, doing coding phase, and finding your software developer job. How did you keep things in check? I know you mentioned like having like a list of things that you want to accomplish. Like, was that list something that you kept consistent throughout, like moving from one part of your life to the other? Like,
Well,
yeah.
sort of, yes. I mean, I've got now it's just a mental list because I've
Mm.
gone over it so many times. But uh, I had the short-term goals. I've accomplished everything I want to do. I'm too old to. Okay, well that's a whole nother subject. I don't want to go out and say I'm too old because you never know what could happen. But I don't have a tremendous desire to go through the process to go into like Google or Amazon or anything like that. I like what I'm doing where I'm at, and I like that as a base.
Mhm.
Um, still see a lot of growth potential. And then
Right.
when I don't, I can do lateral moves into other groups and all that. So there's a lifetime of growth there. And it's still working at NASA. So
Yeah.
that's pretty great. Um, it's if nothing else, it's fun to say
Yeah, that's awesome.
that.
And oh, sorry, please continue.
Oh yeah. But it's always good to keep in mind, medium and long term goals. Like, what's your 5-year plan? Do you want to open up a business? Do you want to make long term? Do you want to make $500,000 a year while you're sleeping? Which I'm sure nobody's gonna argue about. But it's you always have to do something towards working towards those goals.
Right.
I like to do something each day. I might have do that for a disproportionate amount of time to the time I relax, but that won't always be the case. I know when I responded to a comment about the weekend yesterday when in your Discord room, like talking about I don't have weekends. That's really the time where I can sit down and have 10, 12 hours nonstop to work towards my dream. And that's why I do it. There are times where I feel like crap, or if I can't get out 10 lines of code in an hour, I'm like, okay, I need to go do something else for a while. Or I spend 4 days debugging something and I'm stuck. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do something else and come back to this. Most of the time when I do that, like if I go do a workout or something, I figure out the solution while I'm doing something else.
Mm,
So it's all that's a balancing act, but keeping true to the list that you create and not taking that scattershot approach, I think is better in the long term.
right, right. And I think that's kind of, and maybe if I could kind of rephrase it from my perspective of what you're trying to
Sure.
say too is like, would you say that it's, sometimes people are just too like they just have this goal, but they don't really have the short to medium and medium to long term goals to actually get there, right? Sometimes they just say, I want to be a software developer, or I want to have I want $1 million business, but then they don't really have a strategy to actually get to that business or get to that goal, right? So essentially,
Right.
it sounds like you were able to break it down into like achievable goals, and then you have a lot of different goals, but taking a break from one goal can kind of lead to you accomplishing another one. So you're taking breaks in between, but at the end of the day, just having maybe like sizable chunks that you can accomplish to ultimately lead to that final goal is what you've kind of been focusing on generally.
Right. Yeah. So if I create a website that
Hmm.
I want to make money from,
Hmm.
I want to say, hey, I want to make $40,000 a month from this website. Well, when you sit and think about what that's going to actually take, then
Yeah.
it gets overwhelming. And you're like, okay, maybe I can put that to the side and I can work on something else. But when you start doing that, you never achieve anything. And you don't realize that you have to start with not making any money off of the website. And then you make $5 and $10 and 1,000 and 10,000. And it's all a process, and you kind of have to trust the process, uh,
Right, right.
and not abandon it too quickly to do the next thing you think might be good.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, even with my YouTube channel, I'm not really making anything monetarily, but it's something that number one, I enjoy the process, and this is something I do have my long-term goals as well, like 5-year, 10-year plan with this channel. Sometimes I have a hard time with my like even my own imposter syndrome of like, oh, like I don't want to make it sound like I want to achieve these goals. What if I fail, right? And but at the same time, it's kind of funny because I always preach about being okay with failure in your software developer journey, but on the other things, sometimes you still kind of fall into unfamiliar territory, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I say this and I don't accomplish it, then what's gonna happen. But I do agree. Like it's definitely something that you kind of need to number one say you want to do. You just got to figure out you got to figure out how to build infrastructure around it to accomplish that goal. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
think it might have been Einstein. Man, I'm terrible at remembering quotes, but I think he said, I didn't fail. I found 10,000 ways I didn't succeed.
So
And
true.
eventually you'll get there to that being successful in whatever it is if you're persistent enough or come about it from different angles.
I completely agree with that. So David, I mean, generally at the end, we're at the end of our episode, and I like to kind of end it with some kind of theme, or just kind of some narrative or some parting wisdom. And for you, I want to ask, how has discipline helped you in your coding journey?
Yeah, so that's been number one in everything I've done, not just the coding journey, but I can focus on the coding journey for this. So motivation, ebbs and flows. You really might just lose complete motivation one morning to do any coding stuff. But if you set a goal to say, hey, I want a job in 6 months, or I want to put out this React project in 2 months or something, um, if you don't have the discipline to do what you need to do each day to achieve that, then you're not going to achieve it. I mean, basically. So so discipline kind of picks up where motivation, leaves off.
Mm,
And it's not it's not always fun. It's not easy. Actually, it's never easy. But I believe discipline can get you through. Like it can be applied to anything. Like most people can apply it to like fitness. That's the perfect example. If you go to the gym every day and you lift weights, eventually you can lift heavier and heavier weights. But you can't go in and have a year gap from lifting, let's say, 100 pounds and go right back to 100 pounds. You have to do steps along the way and have the discipline to go in even when you don't want to. And
right.
it's the same thing with software engineering or web development, I mean, or anything else.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it where you said, discipline is, I mean, I might be butchering what you just said, but discipline is all about that consistency, doing things when you don't want to do it, and motivation can only get you so far. Yeah, like one day you
Yeah.
might be super motivated and code for like 8 hours, but then literally the next day, if you feel exhausted, oh, I'm not motivated, so I don't want to do it. But something about discipline, it's really synonymous with consistency and just doing it when you don't want to do it, essentially. So much respect to you, and obviously your journey has been pretty wild. I mean, I know you sent me that video as well, and I'm really glad that you did take both a traditional route in terms of like education, but at the same time you weren't like closed off to not try out different ways to get to where you are. And obviously, everyone has their own path to becoming a software developer. And, being at NASA seems like it's a pretty fun experience. And I can't wait to hear more about it in the future. Actually, one thing that I do want to mention is if anyone wants to get a hold of you or talk to you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Uh, well, put your Discord link
Mm,
in the chat or in the description below, and I will be on there.
right.
That is the easiest way right now. I do have a website that I am going to create at one point that is a community. I already have some blog stuff on there, but I'm keeping that quiet for right now because I have other focuses,
Got
other
it.
things I want to achieve first.
Got it.
So,
And
yep. So Discord Tech Rally, I'll be in there.
cool. And yeah, his nickname or screen name is DJ Norris on my Discord channel. And yeah, David, if you ever decide to go live with that video, I'll make sure to update my description in this video specifically, so you could also kind of grow your community as well. I think it's really cool to see multiple communities that are just focused around software development and just trying to become a software engineer. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great.
All right, bye.
Bye.